He's the bulwark against Islamic extremism, which is why there are assassination threats. And he has also provided a showcase of race relations where the management of ethnic diversity is our greatest challenge. In addition, he's been the economic modernizer who's given us a vision and strategic thinking and all the economic success we once enjoyed. But to my mind, it is the other role that's important.
That was Dr. Patty Bowie of Patty Schubert on Malaysia and Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad. Still to come on Challenging Asia, the region is not out of the woods yet. An economist warns about the obstacles still standing in the way of Asia's rebound.
There really is insufficient reform. It really is quite disappointing. There's been a lot of pain across Asia, but not nearly enough gain.
Thanks for staying with us. This is Challenging Asia, the road to recovery. Well, the regional financial turmoil has forced many in Asia to question the way they do business and the environment in many regional countries. As a result, governments are now taking action to fix the flaws of their political and economic systems. But one writer and economist, Michael Backman, says Asia is still not learning from its past mistakes. Now, Backman recently published a book called Asian Eclipse, exposing the dark side of business in Asia. Well, earlier I talked to Backman and started by asking him whether Asia has changed in the right direction.
When we talk about change, we're talking about corporate governance regimes and other regulatory regimes becoming more modern, not necessarily more Western, but more modern, and that's quite important. But right now, I think it's certainly fair to say that there really is insufficient reform. It really is quite disappointing. There's been a lot of pain across Asia, but not nearly enough gain.
Okay, now how much of a problem do you think is the fact that there is this nexus, or has been for a long time now, between business and government? We're talking about vested interests here. They're literally, you're asking them to almost commit suicide.
Yeah, absolutely. There really must be a greater separation between power, basically, within Asia. Whether you're talking about the judiciary or government and regulators and business and politicians. And what you need is a lot more competition and a lot more accountability and a division of power. I think particularly in those countries which are more Confucian, there's very much an idea of a consensual way of doing things and the indivisibility of power. And unfortunately, in the age of globalism, these sorts of things are no longer appropriate. Asia must reform, and that's that.
Okay, which countries or economies are you most optimistic about, and which ones are you least optimistic about?
Now, I feel quite positive about, of course, Singapore. And Malaysia, even Malaysia, I think, it has a basic rule of law that works, particularly when it comes to business litigation. Anwar Ibrahim might disagree, but when it comes to business, it works. So Singapore and Malaysia, Hong Kong is going backwards very fast. They are taking a sledgehammer to their institutions. There's been a series of absolutely absurd and highly dangerous decisions by the Hong Kong administration to absolutely dismantle what has made Hong Kong so great. And so I think probably Hong Kong has come out of the Asian crisis probably in the worst position, because the one thing that the crisis has taught most of Asia is the importance of institutions, and that's the one thing that Hong Kong is currently trying to dismantle.
You're talking about the right to vote issue and
absolutely,
the judiciary?
Absolutely, the judiciary, the cyberport issue, which is basically a condominium project, a lot of land and so on, given to someone quite senior in the form of Richard Lee, without a tender. And also the decision last year to partly nationalise a lot of Hong Kong companies with a decision to buy up all of the shares. Now that is ridiculous. So I feel just so pessimistic really about Hong Kong.
Okay, but surely you must be more pessimistic about Indonesia, though.
Indonesia has had an election, of course, and Megawati Sukarno-Putri might well be the next president, but quite frankly, who cares? If you don't have the rule of law, it is quite irrelevant, which set of people at the top there are going to be. I think the elections in Indonesia basically are going to see a new round of cronies at the same old trough. Without the rule of law, there is no point in having democratic elections. I think what those elections will do without the rule of law, whereby everyone is equally accountable and equal before the law, without that, the next person who becomes president could be just as corrupt as the last, and it will simply give democracy a bad name.
Author Michael Backman, an economist who's just written a book about why Asia is still not learning from its mistakes. Well, Indonesia is one country that has much to cope with. Among the most troubling, its corporate debt totaling $72 billion.